Welcome to Why We Podcast with your host, Vik Rajan, where attorneys, accountants, coaches, and clients share how their show helps their clients, their audience, their guests, and their own practices. You can watch episodes on YouTube and listen through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and more. For the live stream and prior episodes, go to videosocials.net/whywepodcast. Have you ever thought about hosting your own podcast? Already host one? Do you like to be featured on other people's podcasts? Come to our next show host networking event and introduce yourself to dozens of podcast hosts who interview subject matter experts like you. You can RSVP for free at videosocials.net/showhosts. Now here's the host of Why We Podcast, Vik Rajan.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Why We Podcast. Again, my name is Vik Rajan. I am the host. I'm also the co-founder of Video Socials. We are a business community of attorneys and accountants and consultants. And very often they also have their own podcast in addition to being members of our video blogging community. So that inspired the creation of this show for me to learn from other podcast hosts of not only why they started their podcast, but how they're growing their show. And that helps all of us in terms of growing our own individual practices, our businesses, and of course, our podcasts and other types of shows. Today, we have two other podcast hosts, Jill Lublin and Christoph Nauer. I'm looking forward for them to get to know each other, for us to get to know them, for us to learn from them. And as a podcast host, I find that I am very much learning from my guests as much as you are watching and listening. And I think there was some kind of technical audio glitch, so hopefully that doesn't happen again with that I heard on the intro, but I think we should be fine if you guys are hearing me okay, Jill and Christoph. I'm looking forward to hearing that. I'm going to start with Christoph, and then Jill, you'll kind of answer the same type of question. Christoph, even before we get into the podcast aspect of why you started the podcast, can you share with us a little bit more about what you do for a living and how you work with clients?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you. Oops, it sounds like we... Okay, I'll try again. Yes, what I do is, in a nutshell, very brief to the point, I help business owners spend less time in the business and more time on the beach or golf course, whichever one they prefer, while maintaining or actually even growing their revenue.
That sounds fantastic. So is it, does your work tend to be more operational and process and systems development, or is it more sales and marketing, or does it depend? How does that work?
It's more systems and structures, basically it all evolves around the use of our time,
Sure.
know, and so that's what I work with my clients on is prioritizing, scheduling, time blocking, all those things that, most of us never learn.
Yeah, right. Or even if we do know of and we know better, sometimes we need someone like you to kind of not only hold us accountable, but keep the systems in check for us to follow, and systems turn into personal habits, I'm sure. So very often we need outsiders to help us do even the things that we know we should be doing or intellectually know it should be done, but we need someone like you to help us implement that. So that's great. Do you see a pattern or a type of client that you tend to work with in terms of their sector or the type of business?
Yes, usually they provide some kind of a service. Mostly they're accountants, attorneys, financial planners, insurance agents, consultants.
All right, my kind of people.
Yeah.
That's our world. So great. So professional service firms very often. So do you stay away from logistical heavy companies like manufacturing, literally distributors and those kinds of things? And you tend to work more with kind of knowledge workers, as we used to call them?
Yes, I think I have never heard the term knowledge work, but yes, I like
that's
that.
An old term. That's a Peter Drucker term, knowledge worker, if you remember Peter Drucker of management consulting fame, the late, great Peter Drucker.
No, I think that's a great way to put it, yes.
Yeah. Is it Peter Drucker that I'm thinking of? Knowledge worker. Someone will correct me who watches and listens to the show. So anyhow, great. Yeah. So that works wonderfully. And we'll get to soon, Christoph, of the segue and why and how the podcast started. But I want to give Jill a turn. Can you share with us, even before you started your podcast and even outside of your podcast, how do you work with your clients? Why and what are some of the insights for them?
So I typically work with my clients as a publicity consultant and driving visibility using publicity as a primary marketing strategy. I've written 4 books, one of which is guerrilla publicity. So I'm really committed to helping small business owners get their word out, and I think, frankly, people often underuse publicity. So I give them simple, easy ways to get and gain visibility.
So in addition to being an author, and I'm sure we'll learn a little bit later of how we can learn about those books, do you also work one-on-one with clients, or is it only through the books, or how is it that you work?
I do a couple things. I do a
Yeah.
publicity crash course, I call it.
All right,
And
great.
I also do an up-level boot camp where people actually get to pitch the media. So it's highly interactive and a lot of fun, actually. So I do 2 major programs. Mostly what I love to do is really empower the small business owner to get it done, as opposed to expensive PR agencies. I know, because I used to have one, and now I want to pass it along and really have entrepreneurs get publicity done. So I do it typically in that format, with some exceptions where I work privately with people.
That is cool. And so it's not only privately, but they can also come to your boot camps. It sounds like literally they're meeting media professionals there. So it's not just talking in theory, but they're getting it done with you, through you. So that's really neat. That's a really neat program.
Thank you. I'm really into, what I call roll up the sleeves, kind of get it done. And yes, right there, I'm a practical, tactical kind of woman, and I think it's important to get things done.
So then we'll segue into your show first, and then we'll get to Christoph. So Jill, tell us the name of the show, and if there's any coincidence in the name of the show, and then how and why it got started.
Thank you. Well, it's called the Jill Lublin Show. Okay, I probably could do something more interesting, but that's part of name recognition,
Sure.
and being a publicity person, I understand the power of podcasting. And that's really how it got started, was to continue publicity. And I think every person having a podcast is a wonderful thing. You get name recognition, credibility, and visibility. You get to have guests, which is super great. You get to be a guest, which is super wonderful. So I think it's really a good thing for creating more visibility and credibility in the marketplace. And that's really, for me, the biggest reason why.
So when did you start your show, and how did it get started? Like, was it audio, video, and how has it grown?
It's always been both. I'm a big believer in both, because I think now you can multi-purpose it in all kinds of ways. It's always been very short, because I'm just a big believer, working in media for so many years. I'm really one of these let's make it short and keep it focused kind of people.
Okay.
And then it's always been with the help and aid of somebody like you. I think it's really important to have support. I don't think I could do it myself, frankly. And I just sort of show up with my guests like you're doing,
Yeah,
and
right.
we have a great time.
How short are your episodes?
15 minutes.
15 minutes. All right. You get a lot done in 15 minutes. So that's excellent.
I
We're going to go into a lot more detail in terms of how you structure your show, how it's grown, why and when, and all that stuff. But let's turn to Christoph. What was the segue and what was the prompt for you to start your show? And tell us, of course, the name. And all.
I think it was COVID.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's called Better Life, Better Business. That's kind of like my motto anyway for my coaching and everything I do.
Right.
Because the two, in my opinion, are completely intertwined. So then my coach said, "Hey, you should have a podcast." So I started out on just audio on Anchor, and Zencaster, and then colleagues said, "Well, you should be on YouTube."
There are some smart colleagues. It's good that
I think
you can judge yourself from the 5 people you spend the most time with. It sounds like you're spending good time. So, and I'm gonna peel back the onion layer and turn back time a little bit. That first colleague, or I think you mentioned it was your coach. Why did she or why did he say that you should have a podcast? Like, what was that meaning? Sometimes that could be like a backhanded insult or a backhand compliment. So why did they say you should have a podcast?
I think a couple things. It's, like Jill was saying, establishing your expertise in a field, then also being able to help more people. One-on-one or in group coaching, I can help a limited number of people. With a podcast or a vodcast, there's no limit. And that's exactly the same reason why I wrote a book. I mean, this is, again, I can reach more people. And if they listen to some of these episodes, and I'm with you, Jill, I've tried to limit them to 20 minutes, and sometimes I go over, but for the same reason, people's attention span is short.
Sure.
And with the book, again, if there is more ways that people can learn some of the things that I teach my clients, and if that helps them and that makes a difference in their business and their lives, then I've won.
Yeah.
So to me, it's all about serving the clients, helping them with tips and tricks, and if they can do it on their own, fantastic. If not, obviously I'm here to help.
Yeah. And do you do all the production yourself? It sounds like Jill has a team similar to how Video Socials run the podcast for others. Do you have a management running team for your show, or are you doing a lot of the parts yourself?
Well, it's not so much a managing team. I submit my recordings to,
An assistant.
Yeah, to assist. Well, he's
Sure.
the videographer,
Okay,
and
good.
so he is the sponsor of my podcast, and so he gets to include his, part in
Information.
the podcast.
Sure. In kind is what I'm assuming. Sure.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So that's a great relationship, right? So that's excellent. So I'm going to start with this question with you, Christoph, and then we'll go to Jill. Talk to us about the structure of your show. Both of you are making me feel guilty for having a 30-minute show. So 15 and 10, 15 minutes. You guys get a lot more done more efficiently than I do, apparently. So that aside, that's that itself. For those too busy for my show, definitely listen to their episodes. But talk to us about the format of each episode. Do you tend to find, that you have the same type of questions, or do you allow the guest to kind of formulate the questions for you? How do you craft and construct to know that you're going to stay within that around 15-minute mark? How do you do that?
I think a little bit of both.
Okay.
I mean, I do have set questions that I send them and to the guest and say, these are some of the questions I might be asking you.
Sure.
But what I've learned from the time I was trained as a coach, you got to lose your script.
All right.
So otherwise, it's not natural. If I'm attached to a script and adhere to it like it's, I have to, then I want to have it flow naturally, and that helps. And sometimes even when I just didn't have a guest, when it was me, my host would ask some questions and I would answer the questions. So it's a back and forth instead of me just yapping.
Sure.
The back and forth is more interactive, and the change of there's two people on the screen. It's just instead of just me talking.
Yeah.
And so a little bit of both, because I think the guests should have an idea of what questions I might be asking, so that they're not completely blindsided.
Sure. Right. And you mentioned kind of ditching the script, so to speak. And we talk a lot about that Video Socials for video blogging. Some people feel when they're creating even a 2 to 3 minute short video that every word needs to be written out. I tend to say, all right, go ahead and write it out, first of all, because you get it out of the system. And now ditch the script and have 2 or 3 bullet points as a framework is helpful. Most of us can't just create a well-crafted 2 to 3 minute video completely extemporaneously. I think a framework helps us avoid rambling and also touching on a few points that we really do want to make. But to your point, Christoph, that when we have the script, not only do we feel less natural, for anyone who has ever used a teleprompter will immediately start having a great respect for those elected officials and others who are forced to have a teleprompter for a variety of political reasons. That it's a craft unto itself. Acting with a script takes a lot of effort, which is for some reason why they get paid a little bit of more money than I do, because it's a different profession, and most of us aren't trained in that world. And so ditch the script, have a framework. But at the same time, you're able to give yourself enough of a wiggle room. The other aspect is that for most of us, when we're reading, not only do we sound robotic, but I'm sure you've had the same experience, Christoph. If you end up inevitably flubbing up a word, missing a sentence, now you're completely thrown off. Yet the audience has no idea that you forgot a word or you flubbed up or missed a sentence, but you do, so you're immediately self-conscious. It throws the whole thing out the window. And it becomes ridiculous, and then you're having to talk off the seat of your pants and off the cuff when you should have been practicing that in the first place. So it's a great point to talk about how you format the show to keep it free flowing. Jill, what about you? Hopefully you're not saying it's completely scripted. That'll be really awful for me. How do you structure your 15-minute shot in the arm?
So it is definitely not scripted. What I do like to do is ask the guests, what are the top 3 questions you want to be asked?
All right, great.
So I can have them look good, because I want my guests to look great and shine. And I also ask them, of course, for their bios, so I have an idea. And then, frankly, I go with what feels right in the moment, what maybe is the next question that seems to me appropriate. And usually I cover all 3, but I definitely am not scripted.
Yeah. So that's great. And are there actual, do you find a repetitive structure helps? Like, do you have a framework to each episode where you kind of begin with something, or do you completely keep it conversational to the client?
I mean, I flow in with an intro like you do.
Yeah.
People to the show, and then we just flow. We typically flow.
The other topic that I very often do like to bring out is your podcast. Both of your podcasts are interview oriented, right? It sounds like, where you're bringing on guests, which basically means your show is not only helping those watching and listening, but it also potentially can help guests themselves to essentially promote themselves, their business, but there are a variety of other benefits in addition to just them getting promoted. You're creating content for them, sharing it, and there's a variety of other benefits because of that. Have you seen any or heard any anecdotes, and if you're able to share, even better, of specific examples of where a guest has directly benefited from being on your show, Jill? Have you heard that from any of your guests yet?
I'm not sure, but actually I do. Yes.
Okay.
That has happened. And my show, I've been very helpful in helping promote certain causes, let's say nonprofits that I have a heart for. So yes, that is direct benefit, absolutely. But I know that what you say is true around being on podcasts and being guests create opportunity, period, to to create business and create visibility and get relationships deepened and happening. I think it's a very profound and important part of marketing strategy.
Sometimes it happens naturally, and sometimes it's kind of the purpose of the show. When you bring on guests, have any of them turned into clients?
Yes.
Yeah? How did that happen? Like, what was your follow-up process? I'm assuming you're not pitching them on the show, because that tends to not feel good.
No, but
I mean, then again, you may have Christoph, for example, might have a very elegant way of doing it, so I don't want to say it can't be done. But I'm going to ask the same thing to you, Christoph, likewise, in terms of how it's helped guests, and has any of them converted into guests. In your case, Jill, if you're able to give an example, if you're able to name names, it's not necessary. What was that process like? What was a follow-up like where it's...
particularly because they know I do a publicity breakthrough boot camp, for example. I've had many people sign up for that as a result of being on the show, just because they're
they come on the show as a guest. They get to know about the boot camp, obviously, and they go, all right, let me sign up for this.
Yeah.
That's
and
cool.
It's just something that's like, oh, I guess I should learn how to do this publicity thing. So it is more natural. Yes.
Cool. Christoph, what about you? Do you have examples, even before converting into clients, do you have examples how guests have benefited from being on your show?
I haven't. No,
not yet.
No, people haven't mentioned that to me. So
okay, not yet. And you started it within the past 2 years, it sounds like, right? Since COVID. So when did you start your show?
Well, first was, as I said, it was audio only.
Okay,
and then that part, a lot of episodes was just me trying to get some, 15-minute segments on a particular topic that most of my clients were struggling with, and then the guest part came later on.
Yep.
So, and I have, because I was busy with several other projects, including the book, I haven't really pursued the guest part for quite some time now. But I think listening to you and Jill and talking, there's some ideas that are popping up right now, and it's actually fantastic to listen to both of you. And so for me to kind of say, okay, maybe I need to get back into it because it's been put on the back burner.
I would say so. Some of our clients, who run, we have two aspects, right? There's a video blogging club, a video social that I talk a lot about on the podcast. I don't talk as much on this show, although the commercial break will talk about it. Our VIP service, which is a wonderful acronym, stands for Video Interview Podcast, where we run the show, much like how Jill has a team. And so from that aspect, some of our clients do solo shows, solo episodes, I want to say. We shy away from solo shows entirely, where someone wants to only be the only speaker. I tend to usher them into kind of thought leadership video blogging world where they can be a talking head. The opportunity here for us to banter and to get to know one another is kind of like the next level, where we're able to develop relationships with potential clients and referral relationships. So absolutely, Christoph, I think you're sitting on that gold mine where it's a platform and an opportunity for you to bring on guests. It can be a little time consuming to schedule them and to prep, et cetera. But with that kind of assistance that you already have, Christoph, you could probably get it done relatively easily. We'll chat about that. What about people from audience? Has anyone ever reached out to you? And I know you're relatively new with having the show. Has that happened yet, where someone from the woodwork of your audience, have they shared any examples of how they have benefited, even from your own clientele? Have they benefited from listening and then watching your show, Christoph?
If they have, they haven't told me.
They haven't told you yet. Okay, so that's something to work on. All right, that's something to definitely chat about, because what we found is that there are a variety of reasons of kind of knowing your why, of why you're doing the podcast. And when we work with clients, it reminds me at the end of Wheel of Fortune, Pat Sajak, and the producers, they ended up seeing a pattern that everyone would pick the same letters for like the final wheel round. If you're familiar with how Wheel of Fortune, the game show, works, where at the final round, you have to kind of name the letters that are going to be hopefully in that phrase, right? And everyone would always pick the same letters, R, S, T, L, N, and then the vowel E. Those are the most popular letters. So why would you pick any other letters other than R, S, T, L, N, E? And so they finally got sick and tired of every contestant picking the same, because why would you pick any others? So now they give those letters. They say, all right, we're just going to give you R, S, T, L, N, E. Now you pick 3 other consonants and 1 other vowel just to change it up. So likewise with my clients, I know if I ask, hey, why do you want to start your own podcast? Of course, every one of them was like, well, to get new clients. All right, fair. And that kind of got ad nauseum. So I said, all right, beyond clients, is there a bigger or different, I wouldn't want to say bigger, why? Because money in pocket is a very good reason. But is there a different or other reason of why you would want to have your own podcast? And very often, it's around educating their clients or growing themselves in their own thought leadership and their own personal brand. It's around inspiring others for a change. It can be very much promoting their referral relationships. And maybe there's some quid pro quo they're hoping for. But in Jill's case, it very often is the causes and missions that they believe in that they may benefit psychically from, but not necessarily economically, the way Jill, for example, is able to use her platform to benefit the other causes that she believes in. So there's a variety of benefit that not only that we can gain, that's money in our pocket, but visibility is one aspect, impact is another aspect, and of course, profitability becomes the ultimate driving force, because we find that, look, unless there's an ROI, very often these kinds of projects fizzle away. That also is VIP, visibility, impact, and profit. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I'd love to hear from you, Jill and Christoph. A couple of things. One, I think, Jill, you have a call to action. You have a freebie. I'd love for you to share it with our audience, and let's say who can take advantage of your freebie. And Christoph, you may have some type of a call to action that people can take advantage of that I'd love to hear it. And I'd love to hear, I'm a podcast junkie. I listen and watch podcasts all the time. I'd love to hear from each of you. If you have any favorite shows and favorite hosts that you can shine the spotlight on. Let's take a quick commercial break, and then we'll wrap it up with Jill and Christoph.
Do you want your own podcast like this one? My team will do all the grunt work for you. Just show up, smile, and enjoy talking to your potential clients and referral relationships. Go to videosocials.net/govip to watch our 9-minute webinar for all the details. Are you a busy lawyer, coach, consultant like me? You should have a podcast done for you to get you more clients, impress your colleagues, and it becomes your perpetual referrals flywheel. We find you the right guests. We schedule your guests, handle all the podcast tech, get you into Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and more. Done for you. Go to videosocials.net/govip to watch our 9-minute webinar for all the details. Now back to the show.
And we're back with Jill Lublin and Christoph Nauer. Christoph, I'm going to start with you. How can people reach you? How can people watch your show? Is there any kind of call to action or giveaway that you tend to talk about either on your show or your website?
Yeah, the best place to go is my website, balance6.biz. Balance, the word balance, the number 6.biz. And there, they can access my podcast. I have a whole bunch of blog posts there. If they want, they can also download a free report called 5 Secrets for Putting Your Business Growth on Autopilot. They can also schedule an appointment with me if they like to. Yes, that website is really the place to go and learn more, and packed full of great, helpful tips and tools for business owners.
So balance 6, numeral 6, the symbol numeral 6, .biz. Hopefully people can get that free report, get their business on autopilot, which is what we all want to spend more time on the golf course or the beach. So that's awesome, Christoph. Thank you so much. And before we get to Jill, where can people watch your show? Is it on YouTube? Can they listen to it on everything?
Yes, it is on YouTube. It is on YouTube, yes.
And is it all, and the audio version is on all the podcast platforms?
No, it's not. It's basically on
okay.
YouTube, and
it's a YouTube. So it is a video show. So it's a YouTube show as opposed to a traditional audio podcast.
But it's basically just two talking heads. So if they if they can't watch it, they can still listen to it.
Sure.
And nowadays everybody has one of those things. You can actually just play it right there and put in your headphones.
It's my new American Express. I don't leave home without it. So absolutely. Yeah, and my Visa, because it can take me everywhere or whatever their slogan is. I accept it everywhere. Nevertheless, Jill, same kind of thing. I'd love for people to hear how they can reach you, your website, any calls to action, freebies that I think you have as giveaways.
Fantastic. So check out publicitycrashcourse.com/free gift, where I put together an action guide chock full of tips for publicity and getting your name out there. And then it's a 1-2 free gift, because I'm also inviting you to my free publicity masterclass. It's live with me. Answer and ask all the questions that you have. And I just want to let you all know that I have a continuous fun interactive live challenge also coming up, and you go to jilllublin.com/challenge for that.
So jilllublin.com, Jill, J-I-L-L, Lublin, Lublin.com. Obviously, it'll be in our show notes. And the free stuff is in terms of the challenge and the events. Are they recurring, or right now is July 2022? So like in terms of I know you said that the masterclass is with you live, so it's not an automated webinar or anything. How often do you tend to do them?
They're on the free gift, and the challenge is in September, and then will be updated for the next one.
Okay, great. So September 2022, and I'm sure you'll do another one. So publicitycrashcourse.com/free gift is the place to go. We can get to know you and, of course, learn how we can utilize publicity even better. Your show, where can we catch it? YouTube, podcast platforms, where can we catch it?
Yeah, okay, good. My brother, he always sends me, because he sees that on Facebook, we'll post it, and he always sends it back to me, which I love. But you can find it on all of the platforms, and yes, you should be able to find it on all the platforms.
Okay, good. Yeah, most people, that's the answer. So I feel like I do a whole RSTLNE with my guests, where it's like, all right, it's on all the platforms. You can probably find it pretty easily, but most importantly, to go to publicitycrashcourse.com/free gift. I like people getting free stuff. And then I'm going to ask yourself the same question, but for you first, Jill, do you listen to and watch a lot of podcasts like I do?
My answer is probably not as many as you do, but I do listen to them, and I have a few faves. And would you like to know who my favorite is? So
before we even get to the favorite, so do you listen to a lot of marketing and publicity podcasts, or on your spare time, do you listen to other topics? And it's okay, some people I'll give my answer. So I'm a history buff. I'm a language nerd. So I listen to that, but I listen to, how I built this on NPR. I listen to the basic business stuff like most of us probably do.
No, I listen to a memory expert. I do all subjects. I like learning. I like learning. I'm a big reader too. So I'm more of a learner type, and I will listen unless there's just something that just goes, ooh, that sounds interesting. Like when Barack Obama was talking with who's the rocker, Bruce Springsteen. I thought that's interesting.
Sure. So those are fun. All right, good. And then do you have a favorite show? And is there a favorite host that you know relatively well that maybe could be a future guest?
Yeah, my favorite host is Sam Leibowitz.
All right, Sam.
And I've been blessed to be a guest on his show about consciousness, and he's just terrific.
Sam is great. Sam has been a guest at our show host networking events. He's kind enough to talk about our podcast management services with his clients. There's definitely overlap. He does wonderful work, and there's a little bit of overlap with what we do and what he does. But he's a great colleague and a friend that I've known for many, many years here in the Long Island, New York City business area. What's that?
I said it's a wonderful coincidence. I love that.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't know that I know Sam, but I know Sam really well for many, many years. So thank you for putting a spotlight on him. Christoph, what about you? Do you watch and listen to a lot of shows, a lot of podcasts?
I probably will start doing that more after talking with both of you,
Right.
Because I'm more of a reader than a podcast listener, but that's just more my cup of tea. But I think.
They still say readers are leaders. They don't really say podcasts viewers and listeners are leaders. I have to create a different cliche for that. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's even better to have that good habit. But yeah, do you have a favorite show, or do you know a show host that you'd like to shine a spotlight on?
I think there's a website called eventraptors.com, and
sure.
I've been up to. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I do actually. Yeah, I met her through one of the JV networking things that I did. Yeah, go on.
Okay.
Go on,
yeah, and so they have. There's a slew of incredible people there, speakers and hosts that do events. I think I highly recommend you go check those out, and that's an easy way to find guests, and that's how I found Becky. I think I mentioned her, and if you want, I'll send you her contact information.
Oh, thank you so much.
I was just on her show yesterday, and so it's and when you were talking about who, then Event Raptor came to mind, because that's how I found her. And I'm listing myself on EventRap. You can create your own profile on there if you like.
And it sounds like you were on Becky's show yesterday, so that's excellent. What was it? Do you remember the name of the show that you were on yesterday?
Let me bring that. It's
all right. We're doing a quick Outlook search right now.
Yeah, she's about passion, lifestyle now. That's what,
all right. So if we put passion, lifestyle now, and Becky into any kind of podcast search engine, including the Google search engine, I'm sure we'll find it.
You might, but I'll be happy to put that information.
I appreciate it. Yeah, the personal introduction is wonderful, but for our viewers and listeners, it'll be great for you to listen to a little bit more of Christoph, as well as to watch his show on YouTube. Likewise, you can catch Jill just about everywhere from YouTube, etc. Only makes sense considering the publicity work that she does. Jill, thank you so much for coming on and taking the time. I think you're actually running off to be on a summit or a conference. I think you're presenting somewhere.
Yes, I'm actually speaking. I do a lot of speaking on guerrilla publicity and
makes sense.
Fun things.
So you're literally about to do that now. So hopefully you can take some break from talking incessantly. But good luck with that. I'm sure you'll do great naturally. And thank you, Christoph, for taking the time likewise to be on Why We Podcast. Just about every Friday at 1:00 Eastern, we stream live on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube. You can catch prior episodes on YouTube and RSTLNE, like all the others. You can catch us on just about every other podcast platform as well. You can get to know Video Socials, the business community, at videosocials.net for your video blogging. Together, fun and done. If you've ever thought about hosting your own podcast, we'd love to chat, where we can basically make it easy for you just to show up at showtime. You can learn more at videosocials.vip. Again, my name is Vik Rajan. I'm looking forward to getting to know you soon, and thank you so much for watching and listening. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Christoph.